Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Liz Heiman, and you're joining me for Sales Strategy or Train Wreck. Welcome, and thanks for taking some time to spend with me today. This is the Sales Summit for the Sales Experts channel. So let's get started with sales strategy. I know that you've all been sitting in a meeting, and you're all talking about strategy, and somebody says, we could sit around and plan all day, but why don't we just go ahead and get going and do something, make a difference? And that's fair because strategy without execution is a waste of time. But hang on a second because my slides are not moving. Are they moving for you guys? There we go. Okay, but sorry about that. But anyway, so strategy without execution is a waste of time, frankly. But execution without strategy is a lot like ready, fire, aim, which actually looks a lot more like fire, look, uh-oh. And unfortunately, if you've ever played golf with me, that's a lot what my golf game looks like. But it's not what we want our sales strategy to look like. So let's go ahead and think about what it is that we can do to make sure that we have a clear sales strategy. Let's face it, I am a big fan of sales strategy because I have seen what happens when sales teams of all sizes forge ahead without a clear plan. It isn't pretty. And what happens is that you'll have a bunch of salespeople who are making decisions based on what's best for them in the moment. Not because they're selfish or short-sighted, but because they just don't know which way the train is headed. So it's every man, or in this case, woman, for herself. And eventually what you get is a train wreck. So what we want to do is create strategy that helps make sure, and you'll forgive me continuing my metaphor, but helps us to make sure that the train stays on the track, that we're all talking about the same thing. When we put together a sales strategy, we are looking for a couple of critical outcomes, and those are clear priorities that everyone understands, clear outcomes everyone can measure, clear guidelines everyone can follow, and clear goals everyone can work toward. This is really important if you want success. And the best example I can think of is an old-fashioned sailing ship. So close your eyes or look at the screen and imagine that old sailing ship with all that rigging and all those sails. Now imagine that the captain yells, "Cast off," but the crew doesn't even know the course. They don't know where they're going. They don't know which way to steer. They don't know how to trim the sails. They don't even know how to stay out of the way. So let's face it, if they're not all on board and going the same direction, who knows where you'll end up? And let's hope that this ship captain isn't meant to end up in the Arctic. Honestly, a team is like a well-oiled machine. And if they're well-trained and they have clear instructions and they know where they're going, they'll get there and they'll do it well. But if any of those pieces are missing, then the puzzle just doesn't fit together. And we've all seen what that looks like. Everyone needs to know where you're going in order for this to be a success. So what I've seen is that companies spend a lot of time and effort and resources focusing on hiring the right people, training them well, and giving them powerful tools. But without a clear understanding of the strategy, your team simply can't deliver what you need. So let's talk about strategy and what would be involved in the strategy that will deliver the kinds of results you want. So whenever we put together a sales strategy, there are a handful of things we definitely want to include. The first is an ideal customer profile. We want to know clearly who it is we'll be selling to. We want a SWOT analysis so that we know how we're positioned to achieve the goals we set out to achieve. We want a market strategy so that we are clear about where it is we're going to get the revenue we're seeking. We want clear revenue goals, and we want to know how they're divided. We are going to need clear positioning so everyone knows how we need to position the company and the products in order for the customers we're pursuing to understand and want to purchase. And most importantly, once all of that's done, we need a really good action plan. One of the things that happens in the world of sales or in the world of business all too often is that somebody at the head of the company comes up with an arbitrary growth number based on investor demand, new product development, operational capacity, or some other factor that has absolutely nothing to do with sales capacity. And what happens for you as sales managers is that you find yourselves in the position where you have to somehow spread that growth across regions and reps. So you can spread it equally, or you can spread it arbitrarily based on whatever crosses your mind, or you can base it on some often unsubstantiated belief about which markets or reps can support the most growth. And well, when we have an arbitrary goal and we have arbitrary distribution of that goal, we end up with really unhappy salespeople. And it impacts our outcomes, and it impacts attrition. So we want to make sure that we really do think about how are we going to support our salespeople, keep morale up, and grow the way we need to grow. And the way we do that is by creating a really great plan that supports the growth, regardless of how corporate came up with that answer. One of the things that we also know is that when we have unrealistic or very high demanding sales revenue goals, it puts tremendous pressure on our salespeople to sell without a clear understanding of what they're selling, why they're selling it, what the goals are. And salespeople are pretty amazing. They can convince anybody to buy, and they will, whether it's a good fit or not. And while that will work in the short term, it isn't sustainable, and it can end up being very expensive. So it is critical that the sales plan that you create supports your salespeople and delivers the long-term sustained growth that you're looking for. So the question is, how do we do that? And I think the best way to start is with an assessment. We want to look at what's happened and try and figure out how we're going to use that to build from. So I like to start with, what did we accomplish last year? What changed between this year and last year? How are we currently positioned to achieve those revenue goals that have been identified? Based on what we did last year, where are we going to look for growth this year? We want to look at what we have currently that we can leverage in order to achieve the growth and the revenue goals that we're looking for. And last, and I think most importantly and most often forgotten, is what is your sales team going to need in order to provide that growth that you're looking for? So let's go ahead and let's start by looking at last year. What did you do in 2016? And my favorite way to do that is to take the information that you currently have in your CRM, whether it's Salesforce or something else, and dump it all out into a really simple spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is going to have client name, who the rep is, the products that you have, and either products or product groupings. You don't want a whole bunch, you want a handful. You want the total revenue from each client, and you want some indication of company size, whether you do that by revenue or number of employees or number of locations, whatever measure you use to identify company size that's relevant to what you're doing. Now, this may seem really simple, but what's amazing is when you start, you can really begin to see trends in what's going on. Now, I like to start my process by thinking about my individual team. So if you look back at that slide I just showed you, we have it sorted by sales rep. Charlie, Joe, Mike, Sue, Vivian. Okay, so I want to think about my team members last year. How much did each rep sell? What products are reps? What products did each rep sell? And who did they sell it to? By understanding that, I can look at the individual reps and figure out where they need support in growing their territories and what they can do to improve the relationships with their existing clients. So that's one assessment I want to make of where we've been. The next thing I want to do is I want to take that simple, silly little spreadsheet and I want to start sorting it by different categories and looking at what's been going on. So in this case, I've sorted it by total revenue. And I can immediately start to see, wow, these are the clients that spent the most money with us. And look how much more money they could have spent if they bought some of our other products. So I immediately start looking for, what did we do last year? What did we miss last year? I can then sort it any number of other ways to look for similar kinds of information. So I want to look for, as I'm going through this process, as I'm going through the spreadsheet, I want to look for who are the clients that had the largest purchases? Who were the clients that were most profitable? Who were the clients with the shortest sales cycle? Who were the clients that we had repeat business with? And once we do that, we are well positioned to do the very first thing on our strategy sheet, which is to find our ideal customers. So an ideal customer clearly are those that spend the most money, are the most profitable, have the shortest sales cycles and the least problems, and do repeat business with us. And if we're really lucky, maybe refer new business to us. So let's think about, based on what happened last year, how would we create an ideal customer profile? So what I would do, and what I do with my clients, is to break it down into a couple of critical pieces. One is I'd look at geography. Does geography matter? Are they U.S. companies? Are they international companies? Are they on the West Coast? Are they in areas that are growing fast? What is it about geography that matters? And then I would look at demographics. And these are the things we all look at. What size is the company? What industry are they in? Those kinds of really basic things that we typically use to identify our ideal customer or the customers that we're pursuing. But then if you really want to know who the customers are that you like best and that you want to pursue in the future, you want to think about what kinds of behaviors do they exhibit? Do they cause a lot of problems? Do they partner with you in solutions? Do they have people in place to support the solution that they've purchased so that they're successful? Do they work with you happily? You know, what does this relationship look like, and how do they behave such that it either supports or doesn't support your relationship? And the fourth thing is the thing we call psychographics. And this is a word, if you've been watching the news at all lately, you've been hearing in two different arenas. One is in big data around marketing. We can use psychographics to learn about our potential customers and what kinds of things indicate whether somebody's going to buy our product or not. And I don't know if you see games on Facebook, for instance, where they're really trying to understand the psychographics of potential customers because they're answering questions about what's important to them and what isn't important to them. The other place that you'll see this in the political arena, where they're now talking about, can they use psychographic information in big data to determine how people will vote? So this word is going to become a more and more common word in our vocabulary, although we've been using it for many years to talk about how to identify and create an ideal customer profile list. Okay, so once we have that, we have an extremely powerful tool that our team can use to prioritize their time, because you now have an aggressive sales goal created by somebody in your organization based on demands that may or may not have anything to do with what you're doing. So that means your sales team is going to have to get really focused. They're going to have to spend time on those accounts that are going to close the fastest, deliver the highest revenue, having repeat business, and all those good things that we've been talking about. All right, so that was the first step. The ideal customer profile was the first step in our sales strategy. The next thing that we want to do is we want to think about, where is this revenue going to come from? So any good sales strategy starts with existing business, because we know that those customers that we already have are going to be much less expensive to grow than it is going to be to find new customers to sell into. So we want to start by looking at, can we do more business with existing clients? Then we want to say, can we do business with more clients like the ones we have? And after we've explored that, we want to think about expanding into new markets and new kinds of clients. So let's go back again, looking at the existing clients that we have and what we did last year, and let's look for some more trends that we can use to look for business opportunities. So here, this next one, I've done this client list by revenue. This is how much money our clients have spent with us. And you can look really easily here and see the gaps that could be fulfilled. Normally, we might call this a white space map. I call it a yellow space map because I use yellow highlighting. But in any case, these are gaps we want to look at filling. You could sort it also by company size, which is, as soon as this jumps forward, I'll show you. This is company size. So look at the opportunity here. They may not be our largest customers, but they do have the greatest potential, and we can look for opportunities here where we could be selling. So the third place to look for trends would be by sorting by product line and looking for, people who are buying product 1 are more likely to buy product 2. People who are buying product 3 may not be buying product 1. So kind of look around and see what's happening in this world, that in your world with your salespeople, that is creating opportunities for additional sales. And that would be where you want to start your market strategy. Now, what I would say is that this process that I just talked about and this searching for opportunities is not something I would set the sales team off doing on their own. This is an exercise that's best done with your sales team, your product development team, and your marketing team. Because together, they can look at these gaps, they can figure out, why aren't we selling more products to our existing clients? Is there something wrong with the way we're positioning it? Is there something wrong with the way we're the products are designed? Are they not meeting the needs of our existing clients? They can also then ask the question, are we not marketing to people who can use the widest variety of our products? So put the teams together, go through that, and you will have the beginning of your marketing strategy. So the next step in this, we've done some assessment of our ideal customer. We've come up with what that is. Now we want to look at, based on all that information we just put together, all the gaps that we have, the team getting together and looking essentially for what's working and what's not working, we can develop a SWOT analysis. That is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, again, this is not an exercise in imagination. This is an exercise in making sure that you're using the data that you've just compiled to come up with the very best plan that you can come up with. And as you start talking about your SWOT analysis, you're talking about your strengths and your weaknesses, I don't want you to talk about great products or great team. I want you to really look at what you've identified and come up with real information that your team can build on to help you achieve your goals. So we are going to be looking for opportunities to grow existing accounts. We're going to be looking for opportunities to target our defined ideal customer, and we're going to be looking for opportunities to target newly defined ideal customers. So we want to make sure that we have established a SWOT analysis that tells us how we're positioned in order to achieve those goals. Let's look, I know you guys have all heard SWOT analysis before, but I want to just back up for a second and remind you that a SWOT analysis is strengths and weaknesses. Those are internal. Those are the things that have been created within your own company. They're decisions that are made. They're things like, staffing and skill sets and products and assets. Those are things that are internal that you have control over. Opportunities and threats are external. Those are things that you have no control over. There are things like market conditions and technology changes, legislation. It could even be weather. And we think of weather as a negative, but it could be a positive as well. So what we want to do in this process is we want to look for strengths that you can leverage to overcome weaknesses and threats in order to capitalize on opportunities. I'm going to say that again because this is really, really important. The reason we do a SWOT analysis is that we're looking for strengths that we can leverage to overcome weaknesses and threats in order to capitalize on opportunities. And remember, the SWOT analysis is about capitalizing on opportunities to support the revenue goals that we're trying to achieve. So that is what our SWOT analysis is going to be. So now we've done ideal customer profile, SWOT analysis, and let's talk about revenue goals. The important thing to think about when you're thinking about revenue goals is to remember that however those revenue goals were identified, you now need to figure out how you're going to divide them across your team, across your product line, and across whatever other criteria there are. What we know and what I've shared with you already is that one of the best ways to grow your business and to increase revenue is by looking within the accounts that you already have. And what I'm going to suggest is that before you go any further in creating a market plan or doing anything else is to take a look at those accounts that we already identified, those that are the accounts that are spending the most money with you right now, and those accounts that are the largest accounts that maybe aren't spending a lot of money with you, but have a great potential to be spending money with you. So you're going to pick 5 or 10 accounts that you think there's great potential to grow and put your teams together, again, to create large account plans for those accounts. All right. So, and here again, the other thing that I would do is if I was putting together a large account plan and I was working on making these accounts really happy and building great relationships with them, I would build into those large account plans opportunities to get referrals. So don't forget about that as you're creating your large account plan. Okay, so we are going to use all of that to help create a market strategy. And your market strategy is going to include all of the things that we just talked about. So you're going to use your history from last year, you're going to use a SWOT analysis, and then you're going to decide what it is that you need to accomplish in order to reach your revenue goals. You want to look specifically at things like whether you want to focus on new territories or existing territories, whether you want to focus on new products or existing products, and whether you want to focus on new clients or existing clients. And you're going to do all of this based on the work that we've already done. The next thing that you need to do once we've done that is to look at positioning. And positioning is really critical, and we tend to forget how very much our sales team needs us to help them with positioning. So we want to be sure that based upon the information that we have and the market strategy that we've created, that we are well positioned, both as a company and as product lines, to achieve the growth that we need. Remember that you have different market segments and that each one will need a clear positioning plan. And your salespeople need to fully understand that in order to achieve the goals that you set forward for them. This is part of the support that they need to achieve goals. And what I would say, again, is that we tend to leave our salespeople hanging on their own to do things like this. But truth be told, this is a team effort. And again, I would get together the marketing team, the product development team, and the sales team to really work on positioning, to work on things like buyer personas, positioning statements, value propositions, and the other kinds of things that you're going to need in order for your team to be selling the products that you need to sell to reach your revenue goals. Okay, so we have gone through ideal customer profile, SWOT analysis, market strategy, revenue goals, and positioning. And the last piece, and really this is where the rubber hits the road, is the action plan. So this is our fire. We've done ready and we've done aim, and now we're going to do fire. And what typically happens at this point is that we say to our salespeople, go do it. There you go. And we leave them to prioritize their own work and to figure out how to get where they need to go. And I would argue that if you want your sales reps to be successful, it's really important that you implement a well-functioning funnel and an opportunity planning process based on reality. What can you really expect of your sales reps? Now, if you're not familiar with the funnel, it's a good time to get familiar. Your funnel is going to be really the core element of your success at this point. So you want each sales rep to figure out what prospects they have, what where everybody is in the process, and they're going to have to start really coming up with a plan. They're going to have to figure out, if I need to close a certain amount of business, how many prospects do I need to have in order to get there? How many phone calls do I need to make? How much time is it going to take? How much research do I have to do? If I'm calling on existing clients, how many existing clients am I going to have to call on in order to close the business that I need to close? So this becomes an actual time management tool, a planning tool, and a tool that you can use to work with your sales teams to help them accomplish their goals. So we have, at this point, done our ideal customer profile, our SWOT analysis, our market strategy, our revenue goals, our positioning, and our action plan. So I want to remind you, though, why are we doing all of this? And we're doing this because we want to be sure that our team is all on the same track, going the same direction. We want to be sure that there are clear priorities everyone can understand, clear outcomes everyone can measure, clear guidelines everyone can follow, and clear goals everyone can work toward. So I want to thank you all for coming out and spending time with me. I hope this gets you started on your strategy. I've included a few downloads that I think will help you. There's a couple of articles, one on positioning or value propositions, which is about positioning by Jill Conrath. There's an article on ideal customer profile by Alice Heiman. And then there's also a sales strategy checklist, a sales funnel spreadsheet, which will help you get started, and a customer list spreadsheet template. That's that Excel spreadsheet that I was showing you. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at liz@aliceheiman.com, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. I look forward to hearing your questions. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy strategizing.